Incremental greetings. Welcome to the Unschooling Library podcast. You may have noticed that now the name is different. We made 4 episodes of Pleasurable Learning podcast, which I will keep that name for my personal use of another podcast. And from now on, the podcast is named Unschooling Library. You know that's a team effort. We have a Twitter for people, and I will deliver this podcast under the umbrella of Unschooling Library. Now the scope is slightly broader. Whatever it takes to make the paradigm shift happen, to end the coercion in schooling. And schooling, self-directed learning, and everything related to that can make this happen. So today we have the 5th episode of the Unschooling Library podcast, and with that we have the pleasure to have Taylor Boatwright. He's an American now living in Taiwan, and he's making a startup. And could you introduce yourself, please?
We just want education freedom. Education freedom.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Tyler. I moved to Taiwan about a year and a half ago, but I've lived here before. Currently, I'm working on a startup to improve the education system in Taiwan and give more options to students who might not want to go the traditional route. I think the prevalence of cram schools did shock me a little bit. And Taiwan is apparently even better than Korea and Japan on this front, but a lot of kids, especially when they're trying to test into a high school or test into a college or university, they'll go to school all day and then eat dinner and then go to school all night until like 9 or 10 o'clock, and then go home and take a shower, maybe eat some food, and then go to bed. And that's kind of every day. 6 days a week for some kids, depending on how intense their parents put them through those schools.
So what age are those kids, those students?
So I think for those specific incidents, like the most high stress periods, one age group is around 14, because or at least before, I think it's starting to change a bit. Now it's more portfolio based. But before, for you to test into a high school, you need to take it like a standardized test. And so kids will cram for this test during their last year of middle school. It also depends on how much money your parents are willing to pay and how, I guess, tiger parents they are. And then the other age group is right before testing into college. So before, there used to be this big test. They have this in China too, and nowadays it's still really intense. It's called the high test, or it's called Gaokao in China, and in Taiwan it's called Liankao for people who know a little bit of Chinese. But these were standardized tests that anyone could take. And if you take it and pass it and get a certain score, you can test into specific departments of specific universities.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not just going to college. They also do it for going to high school.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So, can you tell us about your startup? What's trying to cope? What's trying to solve?
Yeah, so I think a couple decades ago, at least 10 years ago, from what I understand, the option to unschool or self-school or choose kind of your curriculum at home became available legally. There is a pretty famous Taiwanese politician whose name is Tang Feng, and I think the regular school system was not really working out for her, and so her father worked with the government and kind of pushed through some laws that were able to allow students to have a broader offering of education, or more opportunities for what they could do. And a lot of children and their parents have chosen to let them unschool, and to basically not have a set curriculum. But for a lot of the kids, their parents still will there's these small kind of scattered groups throughout the cities where they will still find out what their kids are interested in, and then find teachers and hire teachers and rent a space and kind of put groups of 6 to 10 kids together that want to learn this skill or type, I guess, subjects, like it's in the same space, and give them an opportunity to interact with other kids and make friends, and also, learn things that they're interested in this format. It's kind of more like a coaching thing. Yeah. And so our goal is to make a platform that can unite a lot of these scattered groups and kind of mostly solve the issue of parents who are wanting to kind of work or educate their kids in this method, in this space, to have a way to organize that's not like being a part of 20 Facebook groups and only being able to really know who to talk to or where to go or how to organize if you have word of mouth. So we'd like to have a platform where people can find and organize these classes for their children.
Interesting. So is that one way so you can look for other people interested in the same topic as you are?
Yes, and allow the kids, basically, to have the same topics and have kind of, I guess, formulate or create groups that are interested and will be able to kind of do these things together. Yeah.
So in Taiwan, the government, the school is not compulsory. You can choose not to go to school.
Yes. Yes. I think I bet the wording is not, like, they don't use the word unschool, for example. Like the translation of it is not one-to-one mapping. What they map to is, they call it self-school, and this other way is like communal school or community school or community study is kind of how the Chinese characters just like kind of translate out. But from what I understand, the equivalent concept is more of like unschooling in the States. Like, you can be at home and learn and not use the state curriculum. Yeah.
Nice. And that's only in Taiwan. This is not, doesn't propagate to the rest of the China. Because I think, I'm not an expert, but I think Taiwan has a degree of independency. It's independent at some degree.
Yes. So to kind of avoid kind of stepping into too much political territory, there is a dispute between the standing governments in China and Taiwan over Taiwan's independence. Going like real brief Chinese history, there was the Chinese Civil War after World War II. The nationalists lost to the communists inside of China, and the party ran away to Taiwan. And there were also a population of people who were already living there. And so then they set up their government in Taiwan, and until this day, it's still, most people, I would say, consider themselves, or I should say, sorry, the government considers itself an independent government for now.
Okay. So that's why they can make this rule of making a school not compulsory.
Yes.
Nice. So, and you said that more or less it translates to community study or community school. And
yes, yes.
Did raises a question, because you said that you want to facilitate making groups or small communities. And my question is, there's people who study by themselves, alone. So
yes, there are. I mean, so the goal of this platform is to allow people to create groups on their own. If you really get down to it, if you had a very motivated parents, they could, theoretically, using this platform, they could use the platform to make a very strict curriculum and force their kids to go through it, right? That would be, so they would have that. And to be honest, even now, because I think you have to declare self-study is what they call, like, you declare a self-study status, your children do. So even now you could do that, right? I could declare this self-study status and force my kids to go to cram school every day and see tutors all day, right? I mean, you could do that. Technically, you could do that, right? You're free to do that. I think the reason this endeavor, and I actually joined into this, I met a friend of a friend who was running this, our CEO. And I think the reason, and I think he is a big proponent of optionality. So, if we really want, I think in his mind, and I kind of agree with this sentiment too, if we really want to change the education landscape and allow more people to realize the benefits of giving children more freedom or complete freedom in their education, that we need to open up kind of the doors to this and open up pathways to where people can actually do this and some people will feel, some people might still want to organize things a little more strictly because they're maybe more well-schooled or they're more traditional sense. But having the floodgates open, our hope is that more people will start to see the efficacy of self-learning.
Oh, so you comment, that's good to comment. Hope is that I guess unschooling is still niche in Taiwan. Even though if all parents can free their kids, they still choose not to do so. Is that right?
Yes, I would say, and this is a very anecdotal. I don't have anecdotal. I do not have hard data on this specific numbers, but from most people that I know and friends and family, yes, the majority of people will still send their children to traditional schooling, and also I would say cram school, if they have the means.
And why do you think are the motivation behind that?
So it's multifaceted. One of the facets has to do with culture. So from Chinese culture for thousands of years, standardized testing and these systems could allow your family to have social mobility. So if I have a student who tests #1 in the whole country, in ancient China, there was this rank called like Zhuangyuan, and it basically means like you tested at the very top of everyone on these specific tests. You immediately get a political position, and you get what I believe is a lot of money. And so in that sense, it's kind of a cultural thing to where this type of system has existed for a long time. And then also, I think there is the idea that there's a strong sense of family and I guess wishing the best for your children, which I think is in every culture. In China and in Taiwan, in Chinese culture, parents are willing to do what it takes to provide a good life for their children. And I think a lot of parents believe that being stricter on them could motivate them or inspire them to lead a better life or do better in life. And I think sometimes that kind of intensity, I think is a good word for it, could, in my mind, could have the opposite effect. But I don't think that most people or most really well-schooled individuals would see this or maybe be aware of this.
Exactly. So the parents' intentions are good-hearted. They want the best for their children. It's just they don't know that they are causing the opposite effect.
Yes.
If they spend money on cram schools, private tutors, and so on. Nice. So
yes, and there's a lot of stories. I mean, parents, like some of these cram schools compared to a lot of the parents' income. I mean, parents make serious sacrifices for this. Like, they either dip into savings or they try to create the ultimate environment for their kid to do well in school. So, I don't know how it is in some European countries. In the States, when I was in high school, a lot of kids are working. You work and make money on your own and kind of do that while you're going to school. That happens a bit in Taiwan, but not in Chinese culture, but not even close. Most of the time, when you're still in school, you are a full-time student, and the parents are willing to sacrifice, even if money is kind of short. They're willing to make these sacrifices to give you the most opportunities they can.
okay, so it's a cultural that the students are full-time students. They don't do part-time jobs. And
Most of the time.
because parents pay everything for them, even if they have to sacrifice and work all day long to pay the bills, the cramming and so on. Wow.
Yes.
So I could imagine that the cram school is a very big business in Taiwan.
Yes.
So if you want to increase the population to self-learning, there will be a conflict of interest, economically, at least.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your startup is targeting the parents or the children, the kids.
So at this stage, there's a lot of ideas flowing around on how we can help kids engage in self-learning or get more interested in self-learning. Currently, though, I would say that our main customer is the parents. So the parents, and because there are teachers and or educators or experts in certain types of schools or aspects, not just like traditional school like math, science, that kind of thing, but there's like natural schools or forest type schools where kids can go in the forest and basically go hiking, and they'll show them leaves and teach them plants and things like that. There's a lot of these type of educators that are we believe could benefit from having more a different pathway to interact with parents and students. Yeah. And so our main customer are the parents of the children. And I would say we're also trying to help these other type of educational entities to connect with a different student base.
So, do you think that targeting the parents is a difficulty? Because those parents are well schooled individuals. Most likely, they don't know what is free learning themselves.
Yes, I think that fortunately Taiwan is in a period of change. And so there are a lot of well-schooled parents, but we have identified a group of parents who would consider this type of format and would consider allowing their children to have more freedom, but they might not be as willing, or they might not know where to find the resources, and they might not know what options there are. Like there are we've talked to a few different potential users, I guess, we've talked to a few potential users who have voiced frustrations with the system, but not really knowing what else they could do, what other options there are. And I think since it does happen on a spectrum, and it seems that as information is more prevalent, and like this generation, like our generation of parents, we believe that this could benefit them.
Yeah, exactly. So you raised a very good point, is that even if the parent wants to do an alternative to normal schooling, they don't know what to do, what resources there are, and so on.
Yes.
And you will provide that.
Yes.
Nice. Do you have a name for the startup?
So right now, I believe it is called, we're still tossing around some stuff, Co-Learn Island, because the co-learn is kind of the Chinese translation over. 共学岛 is what it's called. And so Dao is island, and 共学 is that concept of collective learning. So right now we're working on doing branding and also working on our landing site and things like that.
I like the idea.
So, yeah.
Collecting learning Iceland, because Taiwan is considered an island, I think.
Oh yes, it is an island for sure.
An island, a very big, hugely populated, but still an island.
Yeah.
Such a good name. I like it. You have my seal of approval.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're trying. Yeah.
Yeah. And what interests me is because one of the things with self-learning is that not only the curriculum is different, you choose what to learn, it's also the timing. It's self-paced.
Yes.
Usually, in the school system, the children learn how to write and read very young, very early, and semantically. And with Chinese, it's a special, complicated language to learn and to write down. So, how you think you will tackle the timing, the pacing in?
So traditionally, specifically with Chinese characters, from my understanding and from what I've asked around, that children kind of are forced to write and like copy over and over and over again these characters for like some of the most, it's not even most frequent characters. There's just like a set order, I guess, based on conceptual complexity of what the characters mean, rather than the complexity of how to write the characters. So, for example, it's like a tiger, the character for tiger, Lao Hu, is, I think, conceptually easy, but if you look at the actual parts of the character, it is maybe easier to teach another concept, a character with another concept, instead of that's easier to write to adults. So for children, they just kind of like grind these conceptually easy, but like when you actually write them out, mechanically difficult characters, and they get. I think I'd have to look at the numbers. There's a set number where up until 8th grade, or up until the end of elementary school, I should say, up until middle school, that they kind of get and know how to write and read to a certain point. And so for me, when I was learning, it was like the first 1,000. Once like the first 1,000 or first 1,200 I had memorized really well, then the rest of them were a lot easier to piece together and to kind of just like I got better at memorizing Chinese characters. And I think that period of time for children is like from, I think for some it's even in preschool or kindergarten, depending on how ambitious their parents are, until or for them, how strong the ambition is for the child, until the end of elementary school, before I think they can fully read or feel fully confident that way. Yeah. And so I would say, and I haven't seen this play out in unschooling, so I'm not exactly in Taiwan, so I'm not exactly sure. I've had one contact with an unschooler in Taiwan who was unschooled the whole time. I think I heard he went to 2 weeks of kindergarten and then stopped. And so he's kind of the last generation. So the generation where it was legal, but there weren't a lot of resources. And so his mother did she really did a lot of legwork and found and kind of created these opportunities for him with other mothers. And so I was talking to him, and he said that at some point in time he did go to a class. Like it was in the afternoon. He had like that same type of class, but it was like him and 6 or 7 other kids rather than him and 30 other kids. And he would go like once a week or something like that, and slowly started to learn to read. But I noticed it because I've been to their house. She actually works with us. I believe she's the head of marketing. I know because we're a pretty small company still, or we're still kind of taking form. Besides me, who's mostly tech focused, everyone else is doing a lot of stuff. But she's awesome. But I think that I went to their house and they have tons of books. I realized like they in general, their whole family is very well read, and I would assume that he also must have just started to pick up and read things too. So I think that timing wise, it will work itself out, kind of how it does in other languages.
Yeah. So by just providing freedom, children will start to read when they feel like they want to.
Yes.
You don't have to supervise, because that's one of the bad habits, to supervise children, because this is assuming that they cannot work by themselves. They cannot manage practice by themselves. Because I know that in Sunbury School in United States, it's a democratic school, so there's no curriculum, and there are children that don't start reading and writing until the age of 10.
Wow.
Which this may seem as very late, but that doesn't have any effect on adultness, at what age you started reading and so on. But it's English. It's a lot easier to learn and write down. So I have this question of, I think more or less there are usually, how many characters you usually use in Taiwan, or the government says they are officially common.
Yeah, so I've seen some numbers. A college-educated person usually knows 3,000 to 4,000, and that's probably passive recognition. I would assume that, and my writing is very poor. I can type and I can read, but I can't really write super well. I have to kind of look it up. But I think that they could probably write at least half, if not more than half of that, depending on maybe what their major was.
Because when you say writing down, it's in handwriting, not in a computer.
Yes.
Okay. So you have to memorize the stroke order. There's more complexity. Okay.
Yes.
And do you want to add anything I didn't ask?
I do.
Okay.
I guess kind of talking to kind of finish out this topic about the startup. whether or not this is a idea that will work and whether or not we'll get customers and really make money is kind of up in the air. But it has been amazing to see how, one, parents who have an idea of how effective free learning is and how it influences their children's health, how active they can be in a fledgling community. So I think, so I'd never heard of this concept, even in the States, even where it's been legal and there's been democratic schools for at least 70 years now.
Yeah.
I think, didn't Sunbury start in, I don't know, is it Sudbury or Sunbury? How do you spell it? I forgot. Do you know?
Sudbury.
Okay. Okay, Sudbury.
I'm not 100% sure. I think it's one last name.
Gotcha.
S-U-N, I think. And this was in the 60s. I don't remember if 1969, 68, more or less.
Yes.
It's nothing new.
Yeah, it's absolutely nothing new. And I don't know if it was, I don't think it was probably purposefully limited or purposefully suppressed, but it definitely was not like a trend. And I never knew, and maybe it was because of where I lived or places, I'd never heard of anything like it. I didn't even know homeschooling was an option, let alone, something like unschooling. So I think that it seems that the idea of kind of moving in this direction is potentially profitable with money wise, which is great. I mean, for now, whatever, we all still need money, but I think also it's doing a service. And I hope that, I guess one of the biggest reasons that we kind of have gone in this direction, and we're even talking about this company, is that our main goal is to allow kids to move into a more flexible system with more freedom. Because, and even although I didn't go to cram school and things like that in the States, I switched schools a lot, and there were certain schools that I felt more unhappy in, and I realized I learned even less in than other situations. So, a lot of, I think, fixing schooling and fixing the expectations that we have on children in a kind of an impossible time frame, I think that is something that's worth looking into worldwide, not just in Taiwan, not just in the States, but we hope that we can start to kind of push these ideas out and have it influence more places.
So you could say that you can make Taiwan one of the first adopters of relearning nationwide.
Yeah, I would say that's my personal goal inside of the company. I think that might not be everyone's thoughts on it. I think we're pretty aligned. I would say that our values are aligned, but maybe the degree or the direction might not be. And I'm not speaking for the company at any point. It's just kind of because we're just starting out. This is what I've been putting in mentally and conceptually into the company.
Yeah, because I think the main barrier will be the politicians. So you have to educate the politicians, hey, that's a real thing, and most importantly, this works. And not only works, it's healthy. What you have been doing for 2,000 years, 3,000 years. I don't know how long the Chinese culture has been prevailing the cramming and hard work. Yes.
I think so. The modernization of the schooling system, it's an amalgam. I don't know. I don't think I've ever said that word. It is a combination of this ancient culture, or this Chinese culture, but also with the modern schooling system. So I would say that probably life is harder now for kids than it even was in a society where that test was important. So it was definitely valued, and kids would go to these tutors. But I think the idea of the master-student dynamic, or the almost like painters, right, or musicians in ancient history, the kind of you apprenticing for somebody that you want to do or have this job, that even seems like a healthier environment than forcing kids to wake up at a certain time, rushing them to do this, having them focus on so many different tasks at one time, and not giving them any freedom, any free time to even dictate their own schedule. It would seem that although maybe conditions or money or resources weren't quite as available then, but their life scheduling and their lifestyle was probably healthier even then for their brain.
I see. And I assume that it's a web app or a phone app for the children.
Yes, it'll. We're starting with mobile.
Mobile.
So yeah, we're starting with mobile for the I think for the parents is who will probably use it the most at this stage.
Yeah, because the target is the parents, so they can manage. Yeah, but how you think they will manage? Because the parents are using the app, but they have to follow what is interesting for the kid, not for themselves. What they want they to their children to do.
So at this stage, in our first stage, we're kind of moving in the direction of solving the logistics issue. So it's connecting the families with these potential interest to classes, right? But like I said before, if we did have a parent, and we probably will, if we do have parents that are more focused on giving them a outside of school system education, but more of a traditional classes and things, and maybe stuff that they don't like. I mean, they could still do that, right? They could still do that. That would be their own prerogative. What I'm hoping is that, first of all, I think the spectrum of parents inside of this community, in this niche community, is much broader. And I think from what I know, and even someone like Tang Feng's dad, who also, he actually teaches one of these types of classes. I think he teaches a philosophy class. And he's done that for 20 years since it became legal. I think that more exposure to these types of people and these types of ideas could be beneficial regardless of the starting point of the parents. Just kind of mixing with more non-traditional thinkers in that sense. Non-traditional thinkers on the subject of education could be beneficial. But at the first stage of the app, it's not going to solve this problem right away.
Okay.
We're still kind of thinking about how, and I'm thinking about how to add that input to push in that direction. And we'll kind of see, because we still need to get some of the, I would say we need to have some foundation before we can start to move things in that direction.
Yeah, exactly. And how you will monetize the app?
So we're looking at different strategies right now. That's not my area of expertise by far. I would be much better at cutting costs for development. So we'll see. I'm still learning, and fortunately, our CEO and some of the other members of our team have that expertise.
Okay, but
So I'm kind of still seeing that.
that not technical wise is so. Let's say I am a parent
Yes.
in Taiwan, and my money is short, and instead of paying a lot of fees for the cram schools, the self-learning solution will be cheaper, the same price tag. So the parents that choose free learning, they don't do it for the money. They do it because they really think it's better. That's my question.
I think so. I think that currently, and I've actually I ran into a couple people at the gym who were talking to me about it. The idea is that people who can do free learning are people with more money. And
With
so
more money.
they can afford with more money, and so they can afford to not send their children to public school. So I think that currently that's the state of the market, but it would depend. I'm not quite sure. So money wise, I think we might try to take booking fees from the classes, like maybe take a small percentage or something like that, or offer some premium features. But since a lot of this stuff is very early on, it's kind of just starting out as an idea. I can't say for certain. And I think I would be doing a disservice to what we're trying to do if I say something if I say something too early and it turns out not happening that way.
I understand. Don't feel obligated to answer. So the public school system in Taiwan, it's free of charge.
So I don't think it's 100% free, and for young kids, like the children between 0 and 6, there are preschools or kindergartens you can send your child to, but they fill up extremely fast. So most parents, even parents who want to send their kids to kindergarten, cannot. There's not enough resources. There's not enough kindergartens to send their children to, and so there's a lot of private ones. And usually it's like they'll have what they call like a bilingual preschool, and or a entire English preschool that'll basically force your 2 and 3-year-old to learn ABCs, or try to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So they have a lot of private schools that way, and so there's not enough public schools. So I think for a lot of parents, if they can get into a public school, that's great, and usually it's cheap enough to where it's not an issue. But the private schools is what I think most parents end up sending their kids to.
Okay. Private schools, not only up to 6 years old.
Yes, they have private schools throughout. I think though, once you get into elementary school, they do not, like, there's more schools that kids can go to. So they don't have the issue of not having enough schools for your children to attend.
Okay.
Yeah.
So perhaps more people will be inclined to try free learning if they cannot access to a school,
Yes.
a public school.
Yes. At least at the beginning. At
Oh,
least
yeah,
before their kids are 7, or I think it's 7 or 8. I'm not sure. Before
But
their kids get
yeah, but that's the most important stage of life at the beginning.
Yes.
Before you do any harm on the kid, on the
Yes.
brains. Yeah. Okay, so I think just to wrap up, if you want to add something.
No, that's everything.
Okay, so if you are seeing this or listening to us in a podcast and you have any question, feel free to comment or send an email or join the Discord. We're running a Discord channel, so it's in the description box, so feel free to ask anything and you can meet both of us because Taylor is also in the Discord now.
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to say something to the viewers, listeners?
Sure, guys. For anyone who's free learning inclined, I highly recommend you give yourself an opportunity to. Regardless of whether you're a kid or an adult, if you have the means to take some time off and just kind of explore your interests or partition your time out a certain way and give yourself a more chance to look into other things that might not be related to your job, definitely take that opportunity.
Nice. So with that will be all for today. Thank you, Tyler, for your time, and see you next time.
Yes, see you later.